You did not find this by accident. Something brought you here. Not your schedule, not the algorithm, but something quieter, a whisper in the current, a memory stirring beneath the surface of your life. You are being called, and not for the first time. There are gateways beneath your skin, not metaphorical ones, but real, living, humming, waiting. Your hands, so often used, so rarely noticed, are not just flesh and bone. They are thresholds. They are bridges. They are ancient instruments designed to interact with something most have forgotten, the living field of vibration that surrounds all things. This is the remembering, the return. Long before language, long before history was written in books, it was carved into hands. The lines of your palm, the spirals of your fingertips are not random. They are remnants of a code, a sacred design. They speak of something older than culture, older than mind, something divine. And yet this truth has been buried, covered by years of practicality, repetition, numbness. You were taught to use your hands for work, for efficiency, but not for wisdom, not for energy, not for light. That was the forgetting, but the hands they remember. Even now they hum with subtle current. Even now they ache to be seen for what they are, keys, not to control but to awaken. And so this is your invitation, not to believe, not to follow, but to feel, to step into a space where hands are no longer tools but teachers, where skin is no longer surface but portal, and where you, quietly watching, begin to remember what your soul always knew, that you were never disconnected, only dormant. And now, the gates begin to stir. You were told that your hands are for work, for holding, for grasping, for doing. Productivity became their purpose, use their language. But what if that was never the truth? Beneath the surface of motion lies a sacred function, a transmission the intellect was taught to dismiss. The mind, shaped by logic and routine, has long denied what the body never stopped humming, that your hands are not extensions of will, but instruments of vibration. This isn't new. This is ancient, older than books, older than even thought. Each hand movement is not random. It is a signal, a frequency spoken into the invisible web that surrounds you. When your fingers move, they don't simply navigate space. They inscribe patterns into the field, an energetic matrix that listens without ears and answers without words. We've been programmed to forget, to overlook the truth shimmering beneath every gesture, that the body is not mute, that the hand is not mundane. Your palms are radiant maps. Your fingers are conduits. The entire architecture of your hand is a living interface, biological, mystical, and astonishingly precise. It speaks to the unseen. It listens to what cannot be spoken. In the temples of old, this was known. Every blessing began with a hand. Every curse, every prayer, every vow. Because they understood, the hand doesn't act, it invokes. It summons, it sends. What your mind has denied, your body remembers. And now, perhaps for the first time in this life, you are beginning to listen. Not with your head, but with your skin, with your palms, with the space between your fingers. This is not metaphor. This is vibration. And it has always been waiting. What if your thoughts were not hidden, not trapped inside your skull, but radiant pulses moving through the ether, bright, electric, alive? What if every flicker of emotion, Every intention formed in silence, radiated out like sunbeams through the unseen lattice of reality. We are taught that thought is internal, that it stays within us unless spoken or acted upon. But this is a limited view, a view that denies what your body already senses. Thought is not still, it travels. And where does it go? The hands. The hands are where energy concentrates, where vibration meets matter, where light becomes motion. They are not merely at the ends of your arms, they are the gateways at the edge of your being. Like river mouths feeding into a larger ocean, your hands deliver the soul's impulse into form. They do not just touch, they translate. The ancients knew this. Long before the age of circuitry and screens, they mapped the body not only as anatomy but as cosmos. The hands especially were studied not for their mechanics but for their mystery. On temple walls, gods and spirits were drawn mid-gesture, not arbitrarily but with precision. Palms up, summoning. Fingers curved inward, retaining. Palms pressed together, sealing intention. In the Andes, in Tibet, in Kemet and beyond, sacred geometry flowed from fingertip to fingertip, telling stories without words. The hand was a script of the stars. And still today we remember, though faintly. A wave, a blessing, a reach, a clasp, these are not just habits, they are echoes, energetic postures that once carried power and still do if remembered. Every time your hand moves, it gives direction to your thoughts. Without realizing, you've been shaping reality. Each tap, each scroll, each anxious twist of the fingers sends a ripple into the field, most of it unconscious. But the field does not sort by awareness, it simply reflects. So what happens when you become aware? Suddenly the hand becomes something else entirely. A compass, a conductor, a wand of flesh shaped in starlight. It no longer follows the mind, it leads the mind into form. Thoughts are unstable on their own. They shift, flicker, decay. But when fused with physical gesture, when the inner meets the outer, they stabilize. They take shape. And the hands are the sculptors. This is why you feel it in your palm when truth arises. Why your hands tremble not just in fear, but in reverence. They are responding to the shift within, tuning themselves to mirror your deeper frequency. You are not just thinking anymore. You are expressing on a field beyond sight. So imagine what might change if you moved your hands with the same awareness you bring to your words. If every reach, every open palm, every still placement was done with intention, no longer a reaction but a right, no longer a function but a frequency. Your hands are not separate from your soul. They are its most visible prayer. Pause now, not because the world slows down, but because you finally choose to. In the quiet, something begins to emerge, something not of the mind but beyond it. You are not your thoughts. You are not your reactions. You are the one who sees them, the witness. That quiet presence behind the storm, the stillness beneath the motion, the light behind the eyes. Bring your hand to your chest gently. Let it rest there, not to calm the body but to awaken the field. Feel the warmth. Feel the weight. Now close your eyes and imagine your hand not as skin and bones but as a radiant conduit of energy. Light spiraling out in delicate filaments, connecting heart to hand, hand to space. What do you feel pulsing there? Not just heartbeat, but frequency. A silent rhythm echoing through your palm. The hand becomes a receiver and also a sender. It begins to translate the unspoken language of your soul into signals the field can understand. This is not a trick. It's a remembering, a way of returning to your natural state. Aware, present, sovereign. We are often carried by emotion, swept into waves we didn't choose. Thoughts loop, feelings flare. We react, speak, move, all before breath catches up. But here in this pause, the wave slows. You are not in it, you are above it, watching, choosing. The practice is simple but sacred. With each breath, you draw awareness down out of the spinning mind into the grounded body. The hand, resting on the heart, becomes your anchor. And from this place of stillness, a new possibility arises. You get to decide the frequency you emit. You get to become intentional. Perhaps you've lived for years emitting chaos unknowingly, acting from pain, speaking from fear, gesturing from tension. But the field never punishes. It only mirrors. And now here you can shift the signal. This isn't about controlling thought or silencing emotion. It's about recognizing that you are not those things. You are the presence that observes them. And in that recognition, power returns to you. Not the power to dominate, but the power to choose. From here, your hands become more than reflex. They become ritual, a slow movement of grace, a silent prayer in form. Each gesture a declaration: I am present, I am aware, I am the one who sees. So rest your hand on your chest a moment longer. Let stillness become your language. Let presence become your shape. And in that stillness, notice, the field begins to change. Not because you forced it, but because you remembered who you are. There are days when nothing seems to flow. Conversations snag, technology stutters. People respond with tension or not at all. You miss a step, a deadline, a cue. The world feels off-key, slightly misaligned. You call it a bad day, maybe coincidence. But what if it's not random? What if the outer discord is a mirror of your inner dissonance? Your hands are speaking all the time, whether you mean for them to or not. They twitch in irritation, scroll in boredom, tap in anxiety. These aren't just habits. They are signals, broadcasted frequencies that shape your field long before your words arrive. You may be unaware, but the field is not. The field listens, not as a judge, but as a mirror. It amplifies what you send. So when the day unravels, when friction arises and outcomes distort, it's not punishment, it's feedback. It is the energetic consequence of unconscious motion. This is the sacred neutrality of the vibrational field. It reflects, not because it chooses, but because it responds. And so many of us are sending signals we don't even know we're emitting. Signals of worry, of haste, of lack. Our hands become extensions of this inner noise. Fidgeting, grabbing, clenching, all without thought. And yet reality bends accordingly. This doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you're powerful and unaware of how much. Awareness is the first return. Once you begin to witness how often your hands move without you, how often your gestures echo chaos, you begin to reclaim choice. You begin to interrupt the loop. Instead of unconsciously reacting, you pause. You adjust. You become the composer of your frequency, not just the reactor to your surroundings. And as you do, the world begins to shift, not instantly, not magically, but subtly, surely. because the field around you is always echoing what you're radiating. And now you're radiating something different, something intentional, something quieter, clearer. Stillness becomes your ripple. This is the invitation of every difficult day, not to retreat into frustration, but to return to the gesture, to ask, what am I projecting into the field? Not as guilt, but as clarity, not as blame, but as awakening. The field is neutral, but you are not powerless. And in that space between chaos and coherence, between reaction and response, your hands hold the key to tuning everything again. Your hands were never ordinary. They were never meant to be dismissed as mere appendages, useful only for holding, typing, feeding, doing. That was the forgetting, the reduction, the severing from mystery. In truth, your hands are ancient instruments, sacred technologies crafted not by machines, but by the intelligence of the cosmos itself. Look closely at your palm, not with analysis, but with reverence. Each line etched across your skin, each spiral at your fingertip, is more than biology. They are maps, geometric echoes of something timeless. The whorls of your fingerprints mirror the spirals found in galaxies, in nautilus shells, in storms. This is not poetic coincidence. It is pattern. It is memory embedded in flesh. Your hands are living mandalas. They carry within them the same ratios, angles, and arcs that form the basis of sacred geometry. The flower of life, the golden ratio, Metatron's cube. The ancients studied these patterns not as abstraction, but as the architecture of energy. They knew that form is frequency. That shape determines sound. That gesture creates resonance. Every mudra, every sacred gesture is a code. And yet, beyond traditions, your body remembers something deeper, intuitive gesture. The way your hands move when you're feeling truth, when you comfort someone, when you reach not with logic but with presence. These are not accidental motions. They are expressions of alignment. Your hands are the most advanced interface you possess. Not your phone, not your voice, not your mind, your hands. They are a biological transmitter and receiver, capable of holding frequency, shaping intention, guiding attention. You don't need tools to work with energy. You are the tool. You are the channel. You are the temple. And your hands, when used with awareness, become keys. They open fields. They redirect flow. They anchor thought into matter. But only when you remember. Only when you choose to move with presence instead of habit. So trace your fingers with awe. Lift them with purpose. Place them on your heart with reverence. Because what you hold in your hands is not just power. It is sacred. It is ancient. And it has been waiting to be used again, not in force but in remembrance. Before there were words, there was form. Before spells were spoken, shapes were drawn in the dirt, carved into stone, whispered through movement. Geometry is the oldest language, the first tongue of energy. It does not speak in letters, but in ratios, in symmetry, in the precise choreography of space itself. Every gesture your hand makes is an act of geometry. Every angle your fingers create sends out a specific resonance. You may not see it, but the field does. The universe listens to shape. It responds to alignment. This is why the ancients placed form above all else. Before they cast spells or invoked gods, they studied the arc of motion, the golden proportions, the sacred ratios. Because they knew magic is not an invention, it is a consequence. When form aligns with frequency, reality bends. A mudra is not symbolic, it is vibrational architecture. A palm turned upward is not passive, it is open circuitry. A triangle formed by your fingers is not a metaphor, it is an invocation. And just as a well-formed gesture can open doors, an unconscious one can close them. Energy moves where intention flows, yes, but intention is shaped by motion. A gesture made in fear ripples differently than the same gesture made in love. A pattern held with anger warps the field. A posture born of stillness can calm an entire room. This is not mysticism. This is precision. Just as dissonant sound creates distortion in water, so too does dissonant form ripple through the subtle planes. When your body moves without harmony, your field reflects chaos. But when movement carries awareness, when form becomes prayer, the field begins to harmonize. That is the hidden nature of gesture. It's not simply expressive, it's creative. Each hand position, each tilt of the wrist, each span of the fingers becomes a spell, not in language but in alignment. You are always casting. The question is, what are you casting? To reclaim the magic of gesture is to return to the root of creation. To understand that form is not the opposite of spirit, it is its first expression. So move with reverence, shape with care, and let your hands become what they were always meant to be. Sacred geometry in motion, weaving energy into harmony, one gesture at a time. Not all prayers are spoken. Some are shaped. Some are felt. Some rise through the fingers in silence and reach the field like light through stained glass. When your hand moves with presence, it becomes more than motion. It becomes offering. You don't need sacred words. You don't need a ritual performed in candlelight. You don't need permission. When your hand moves with awareness, when it touches the body with gentleness, or reaches toward another with intention, it becomes a flame, a silent invocation burning inside the temple of flesh. Place your palm on your chest again, but this time not as instruction. Do it as remembrance. Let your hand rest there not to fix anything, not to force change, but simply to honor the breath beneath it. Feel how the skin responds. Feel how the field stills. This is prayer, not in asking but in being, not in seeking but in recognizing that presence is already enough. This is what the mystics knew and the poets tried to describe, that there is a kind of sacredness that doesn't need sound, that the body in its truth is already a sanctuary, that the palm in stillness becomes an altar. When you hold your own hand in grief, when you press your fingers into the earth in gratitude, when you raise your arm to the sky not to reach, but to witness, you are praying. Your movement becomes a hymn. Your stillness becomes sacred space. And the field listens, not to the volume of your words, but to the coherence of your gesture. This is the hidden nature of sacred touch, not in the mystical or dramatic, but in the gentle, deliberate, conscious choice to move from awareness, to let your hand be led not by habit but by heart. Because when it is, the simplest touch becomes holy.